How has free agency set up the New York Giants draft? That and more coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On podcast family, your team every day. I'm Patricia Trainer, your host, P-Train, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for Giants Country over on the Fan Nation Network. And a big welcome in to my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. You are all appreciated and loved by yours truly. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or if you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day, or if we're not your first listen or watch, thank you all the same for tuning in and including us as part of your day. And on today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to take a look at how free agency has set up the Giants draft. I have some thoughts on that. And then segment 2, we're going to talk about, in continuing that topic, we're going to talk about, are the Giants now set up to trade up in the first round of the draft? Again, I have some thoughts on that. And then last but not least, I have some winners and losers on the Giants as far as, how free agency went, who emerged as a winner, who emerged as a loser. I'm talking about guys that are still on the roster were on the roster last year. So that's all coming your way on today's Locked On Giants podcast. Let's get into it. So how has free agency set up the Giants draft? Now, before I get into that, Joe Schoen, general manager, did say at the Combine a few weeks ago that once they got through free agency, the roster would look a lot different. And it does. And if you recall, I had said on the show, and I've also written over at Giants Country, that I thought the plan the Giants would take with free agency would be to devote assets to the offensive line, really build that up, maybe get 2 guys, 3 guys even, add to the edge rusher group as well. We also talked about mentioning backup running back, because I didn't think Matt Breida would be back, and I wasn't sure that Saquon Barkley would be back. And of course, they would have needed a backup quarterback, because even though Joe Schoen had said Tyrod Taylor was still in the mix, I just had a gut feeling he wouldn't be back. So sure enough, those are the steps that Joe Schoen took. Now, the reason that I kept saying offensive line is because if any unit needs to hit the ground running out of the gate, it's that unit. Getting, more draft picks, more draft assets. I think the Giants kind of need to take a step back there, and not because, they devoted, I think, something like 4 high draft picks to the offensive line over the last couple of years, but more so, you've got a new offensive line coach in Carmen Brasillo. Let him come in here. Let him start working with the young guys, maybe those guys that haven't really developed as you hope that they would. And in the meantime, plug some veterans in there who can hit the ground running. And that's what I believe the Giants were thinking as well, hence why they went with veterans. The edge rusher group, as you know, I've been screaming about that, not just this year, but for multiple years. They go and they add Brian Burns to that group, and that should definitely help. That's filling a really, really big hole on the Giants defense. So that being said, the Giants basically built from the inside out, which is how they should have built all along, in my opinion. So how does that set them up for the draft? Well, now they can use the draft to fill in some of the holes on the outside, if you will, of the roster, meaning quarterback, if they want to get a developmental quarterback, someone that can come in and sit for a year, which I do believe is the plan there. I know they've got Tommy DeVito, who they're still working to develop. And, I think he'll get a chance to compete. They just signed Drew Lock, who's an experienced veteran. He's going to benefit, I think, from being under Brian Dable, as well as Shea Tierney and Mike Kafka. And then Daniel Jones, of course, they have him, or the expectation, I should say, using Joe Schoen's word there, is that Daniel Jones will be the starter once he is healthy. So backup quarterback for sure, at least for this year. Let the kid sit and just see, how he develops. There's no need to rush a quarterback in there because now you've got Jones, you've also got Drew Lock in there. So, I think quarterback is definitely a need. Wide receiver one. I still say that's the way the Giants are going to go in the first round. If they stay put at 6, get a wide receiver one. Now, last year, the Giants' core receivers, the top 3 guys, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Jalen Hyatt, that's not a bad group. But just imagine what a number one receiver, a legitimate number one receiver, a guy who can excel in contested catches, for example, what that would do for this group, like a Roma Dunze, I think would be a great addition if they could get, if he fell to them. So getting a number one receiver, that's important. Now, other spots that I don't think that the Giants really filled in, and I think they tried to fill this one in, is they don't yet have a definitive cornerback 2. They tried to get Darius Williams, who had been released by the Jaguars. Williams, I believe, signed with the Rams. So right now, the Giants really don't have anybody, unless they're planning on picking somebody up in this next wave of free agency. So that being said, is it possible, given that the cornerback class is so deep, that maybe the Giants are saying to themselves, okay, you know what? This is a deep class. Maybe we can find a cornerback, to compete with Trey Hawkins and with Cordell Flott, a couple of the guys that are returning. Also, Nick McLeod is returning, and maybe we can put another young guy back there, especially considering that Shane Bowen doesn't play a lot of man-to-man coverage in his defensive scheme. He's more of a zone cornerback, a zone coverage type of guy. So that's a little easier, I think, for a young cornerback to adapt to at the NFL level. So you figure cornerback is definitely going to be a need. I think the Giants still want to pick up another running back. I don't know if it's going to be a veteran. I had read that that was what they were looking to do. So we'll see if they pick up another running back. They had interest, I think, in actually correction. I think A.J. Dillon had interest in the Giants. And I don't know what the Giants' interest was in Dillon, but, just imagine getting a nice big power back to kind of give you another dimension to that running game. They probably still need some defensive line depth, because they have some young guys there, Jordan Riley, DJ Davidson. Those guys are definitely going to compete, but, you want to see how that's going to shape up, especially, they've got Rakeem Nunes-Roches, who's going to, who's a veteran like Dexter Lawrence. But if they can get another guy in there to help with the pass rush, that would help them as well. So the Giants, I think, set themselves up nicely for this draft. They addressed a lot of needs. I think we could probably cross offensive line off the board. Edge rusher, we could cross off the board. Running back, maybe you can cross off the board. Tight end, you might be able to cross that position off the board for this year. So there's a lot of positions that they filled through free agency to where now their draft picks, what they have left, they can devote those draft picks to the remaining needs and, the needs that I just mentioned. And the Giants have, let me see, they have 3 now in the top 70, 6, 47, and 70. And then they have a total of 6 draft picks altogether. So really not a whole lot of draft picks from what they started out with. But again, free agency filled in a lot of needs. Now, coming up next, I'm going to talk about the possibility of a trade up, which I don't think is going to happen, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, because it kind of ties in with this whole concept of how the Giants set themselves up for the draft. That's coming up right after this. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Hey, baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Lock On Sports Today. On March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern, be the first to get the local insight from the MLB local experts of Locked On Podcast Network. Again, find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and coming up, we got all new episodes of the Locked On Giants podcast. We're still 5 days a week. There is no off season here on Locked On Giants, so I'll have content for you all week long. And then at the end of the week, Locked On Giants Live. Traina, Tana, Dog. You guys ask for it, I deliver. All right. So Tana, Dog, and I will be on Friday night, 7:30 p.m. We'll go for a couple of hours or so, taking your questions, just having a grand old time like we always do, hanging out and just talking Giants football. So hope you will join us on the YouTube channel, the Locked On Giants YouTube channel for Locked On Giants Live. All right. Now, in this segment, it's a kind of a continuation of last segment in that, how did free agency set up the Giants draft? And I want to talk about a possibility that I think could now be back in play. And that is the possibility of the Giants trading up in this draft. Now, at the start of free agency, I did not think the Giants were going to trade up. And the reason for that is I said, look, they've got all these needs. They've got a lot of work to do. I just don't think it makes sense for them. But Joe Schoen has been busy. He has signed a lot of guys. I don't know that all the guys that he signed will make the roster, but he's certainly given the coaches a lot of options to fill some of the holes that they had on this roster: tight end, offensive line, running back, safety, edge rusher. So he has done some work to help fill in some of the holes. So now, here's the thing. If you are of the belief that the Giants need a quarterback, and I think a lot of us are, that, it's a deep class. The Giants hope they're not drafting in the top 10 again next year, because if they are, something's really wrong. Should they go and get a quarterback in this deep class? Now, we all know that getting a quarterback in the first round is not a guaranteed thing. There have been many quarterbacks that have been drafted in the first round that haven't worked out quite as expected. See Justin Fields for the Bears. They went and they traded him to Pittsburgh. Okay. I think there have been other guys. I remember Dan McGuire back in the year, Ryan Leaf back in the day. So many other guys that haven't quite worked out and have gone on to new teams to find, new life. That being said, if you do due diligence and you really, vet out the process, a lot of times you can come up with a functional guy that can be your guy. So if you're the Giants, what do? Do you trade up? Do you consider trading up? Remember, you've got 6 draft picks right now. You still have a few more needs that you've got to address. Like I said, receivers, one of them, probably another cornerback is another. You could probably, again, make a case for, if you wanted to, you could probably make another case for another running back. You could even double dip at receiver if you wanted to. So what do? Do you trade up? I think they are in a position now to where if they wanted to trade up, they could, but it comes with a caveat. And that caveat is simple. I don't know how many quarterbacks the Giants have first round grades on, right? So I'm just going to speak hypothetically here. Let's say the Giants have first round grades on 2 quarterbacks, and we'll say Drake May and let's say JJ McCarthy. Let's say those are the two guys they have first round grades on. And then let's say they have second round grades on guys like Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix. Well, here's the thing. You can pretty much be assured that the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams first overall. All right. Washington and New England both need quarterbacks as well. So you figure maybe Drake May goes to one of those two. Now, depending on where teams view McCarthy, do they view him as a top, say, 5 or 6 draft pick? It's possible that maybe he goes to, the third team on the pecking order. So if the top quarterbacks on the Giants list, the guys with the first round grades, are not there, then obviously you either stay put, or if you have a team like the Vikings who have 2 first round picks to spare, maybe you work out a deal if they want to come up and get a quarterback that maybe they have a first round grade on that the Giants don't. I think, if anything, the Giants will stay put. I still think they're going to stay put. I still think, the pick, if he falls down to them, is going to be Rome Odunze. That's the guy I like for them. I just love his contested catch ability and his skill set. I think he could be a stud for them. But if the Giants were to trade up, what would make the most sense for them? All right. So you have the Cardinals at number 4. Now, you can make the case that the Arizona Cardinals need a quarterback. I don't think they're going to take a quarterback because Kyler Murray's bonus just kicked in. It kicked in on the 5th day of the league year. They're not going to have any kind of cap savings on him for the next 2 years. So, and they also traded for Desmond Ridder. So I think the Cardinals will probably be looking to do a receiver if they stay put. But you might say, if you're the Giants, you might kick the tires there and say, hey, you guys want to swap spots, especially if one of those quarterbacks falls down the board. Now, I realize that the Vikings are going to be nipping at the heels to get up there because they need a quarterback after losing Kirk Cousins. But, if you're the Giants and you want to move up and you see a guy there that you absolutely think would help your team, you go for it. And there's only, on the draft trade chart, there's only a 200-point difference between the 4th and the 6th pick. So if you're the Giants, maybe you offer, the Cardinals, obviously your first round pick, you swap first round picks, and then maybe you give up, I don't know, your 3rd round pick. You see if you can get that done. Now that might not be enough. The Cardinals might say, nope, we want more. We want to pick next year, a conditional pick or something. Okay. If it's a pick from next year, then maybe you do that. So, that's one possibility. And of course, the other possibility is the Chargers at 5. The Chargers aren't taking a quarterback. They've got Justin Herbert. All right. I'm not sure exactly what their needs are. So I can't sit here and say they need a receiver, which I think they do, but I don't know exactly what their most pressing need is. But maybe you try and if you can't work something out with Arizona, maybe you try to work something out with the Chargers. But for me, if the Giants are going to move up, I think the Cardinals are the team I look to get something done with. And don't forget, there's that trade history. Last year, the Giants and Arizona did business, the Giants acquiring Isaiah Simmons in a trade for like a 7th round. I think it was a 7th round pick. So who knows? Maybe Joe Shane has a really good working relationship with the guys down in Arizona, and they can work out a deal that's not going to cost the Giants an arm and a leg. I mean, look, the Giants need a receiver, a number 1 receiver. This is a deep class, and it is conceivable that on day 2, they can find themselves a really good receiver. So even if they were to trade up in the first round, say with Arizona, they could probably still get a receiver on day 2. And it won't be obviously a Malik Neighbors or a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Rome Odunze, but they could probably get a decent receiver on day 2. So, here's the other thing. If the Giants get the receiver and stay put at 6 and take the receiver, what do they do then at quarterback? Well, here's the thing, folks. Shane has said that the expectation is for Daniel Jones to be the starter. We know that already. Okay. Drew Lock has been added. I think the plan, if the Giants are indeed going quarterback, is let the kid come in, let him sit and develop. Let him get acclimated. Let Dable work with him, Kafka, Shea Tierney, let them all work with the kid, you know, and just bring him along. Because remember, Drew Lock is here on a 1-year deal. If I'm not mistaken, I think Tommy DeVito, I can't remember if he has 1 more year or 2 more years left, but, you know, and then of course you have the decision on Daniel Jones after this year. So if you get a young quarterback that you take maybe in the second round, if you have that second round pick, you develop him, you get him ready to play because, maybe there's an opportunity for him to play later in the season or get snaps and mop up duty or something like that. But you get him ready. You don't have to rush him out there because look, despite the changes the Giants made to the roster, I don't think anybody's going to say that the Giants have a Super Bowl roster right now. So you got to take baby steps. And I think, if a Bo Nix is there or a Michael Penix Jr. is there at quarterback, or maybe even a Spencer Rattler, those are all guys that, maybe the Giants consider if they wait until day 2 and they feel that they need to take a quarterback. So that's how I kind of see it playing out. I do think, whereas before I said, I don't see the Giants trading up given their needs. I think now that's a possibility. And of course, a lot of you are going to say, well, what about trading down? How does that play into the factor? If those top 2 receivers are off the board, Adonze and Neighbors, then maybe, I say trade down. But again, it all depends on how they have those quarterbacks graded. All right. If they only have 2 with a first round grade and then 2 receivers with a first round grade, then maybe you look to trade down. So again, to summarize, I think the Giants stay put at 6, and I think their pick is a receiver. All right. Coming up next, winners and losers from free agency. Talk about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you're having trouble finding those last-minute tickets to your favorite concerts, shows, and sporting events, Game Time has you covered. They offer a wide selection of seats, complete with seat views to help you decide where to sit, and they're constantly offering last-minute tickets through flash deals. There are no hidden fees. You'll know exactly what your deal is before you check out. And Game Time even has tickets available as late as an hour after an event starts, making it truly the best place to find last-minute deals at amazing prices. Want more reasons to trust Game Time? They offer event cancellation protection, and if you find tickets in the same section and row for less elsewhere, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Terms apply. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And again, Friday, 7:30 p.m., Locked On Giants Live. Don't miss it, YouTube channel. So those of you who are listening on our audio channels, if you want to be a part of it, join us on the YouTube channel. And if you can't be a part of it, don't worry, I'll post the audio, just like always, so you won't miss a thing. But it's always great to talk with Tana and with Bad Dog. We always have a great time. It's like hanging out at a bar on a Friday night and just talking ball. What better feeling is that, right? All right. On this segment of Locked On Giants, winners and losers from after 1 week of free agency. Now, I'm talking specifically about Giant players who are on the roster last year, who now maybe because of the moves that the Giants made, maybe their status might have changed for the better or for the worse. So I've got 3 winners for you and I've got 3 losers. So I'm going to alternate rather than give you all the winners first, then all the losers. We'll start off with the winners. Any quarterback that the Giants have underneath center. I do believe the offensive line has improved, and I know we say this every year and it's like, okay, let's get them on the field and take a look at it. But I do believe that the combination of Carmen Brasillo coming in and having shown, especially out in Las Vegas, how he took that line and they made him into a functional line. And the fact that they had veterans that they brought in, Andrew Thomas hopefully will be healthy. John Michael Schmitz will hopefully be healthy. Really, the only question mark, I think we have right now is Evan Neal, but they have options. So I think the offensive line is going to be better. At least it looks better on paper. That would make any of the quarterbacks, whichever quarterback is lining up under center, a winner, because I don't think he's going to have to worry about getting sacked at an alarming rate. At least I would hope that would be the case. So the quarterbacks are a winner. Loser, I'm going to give you a quarterback, and I'll explain why. But I think Tommy DeVito ends up a loser on this, and here's why. Not because if he has to go behind that offensive line, that it's going to be a problem. But here's the thing: Daniel Jones is going to be the starter. The expectation is for Jones to be the starter. Drew Lock is the backup. He's got a guaranteed contract worth a reported $5 million. If the Giants draft a rookie, they're not putting that rookie on the practice squad. All right. So where does that leave DeVito? Come to think of it, if thinking of it, the Giants thus far under Brian Dable haven't kept 3 quarterbacks really on a roster. So what do they do? Do they make an exception now and say, okay, DeVito, we're going to keep you on the roster because you earned it? Or do they put him on the practice squad? Do they expose him to waivers and see if another team, snaps him up? So right now, I would say DeVito's probably not a lock for the 53-man roster. He will get to compete, but if the Giants do draft a quarterback, I think the handwriting is going to be on the wall. So potentially Tommy Cutlets could be out. All right, I'll give you another winner. Kayvon Thibodeau. The addition of Brian Burns. You often hear me say on this podcast that the Giants need a good Batman and Robin pass rushing duo. I'll go so far as to say if they can get a Batman, Robin, and Batgirl pass rushing trio, even better. All right. You can tell I'm old enough to remember the whole Batman series with Adam West. But anyway, Kayvon Thibodeau last year, had something of a breakout season with the 11.5 sacks, can probably get even better if he doesn't draw as much attention. Well, now with the addition of Brian Burns, now it becomes a pick your poison type of scenario for opposing offenses. Who are they going to triple up or double up? All right. Now you throw in Azeez Ojulari, who was originally thought to be the Robin to Thibodeau's Batman, but he can't stay on the field. So, he could be a situational pass rusher. You don't forget about Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence can push the pocket and get after the quarterback as well. So now all of a sudden that pass rush is so much better. And that's all thanks to the addition of Brian Burns. So if you're Thibodeau, now you don't have to necessarily worry about getting double teamed. So you emerge as a winner, as far, at least as far as I'm concerned, you do. Now, a loser, I'm going to go with Ojulari. Now, I know that you're like, well, you just said Ojulari can be, a part-time pass rusher. Well, here's the thing. Ojulari initially was thought to be the guy that would be the complementary pass rusher. He has not been able to stay healthy. We know that. He is entering a contract year, and it looks pretty clear to me that Ojulari is probably going to be a situational pass rusher. Probably not what you want to see when you're in a contract year. You probably want to have, not be a situational anything. So Ojulari is going to, projected to have not as many snaps, and those snaps that he does get, he's going to have to make the most of it. And above all, he's going to have to stay on the field. Because if he wants that nice big contract after this rookie contract is up, he's got to make the most of what is thrown to him. All right. One more winner, John Michael Schmitz, the center. How difficult do you think it was for John Michael Schmitz last year to be playing next to literally a different guard on either side of him on a consistent basis, as often as he did last year? So presumably now, you're going to have John Runyon Jr. on one side. You're going to have either Jermaine Illuminor on the other side, or, depending on what happens with Evan Neal, if they decide to move Evan Neal to left guard, which I still say they should do, but we'll see if Carmen Brasillo agrees. There's a chance that you won't see a rotating guard at next to Schmitz. And last year, they tried Marcus McKeffin was next to him for a little bit, and he didn't hold up. And then, Justin Pugh worked next to him. Then you had Ben Bredesen. It was just a revolving door. And with an offensive line, you want consistency if you can get it. You want the same 5 guys lining up so that you can build up the communication, both verbal and nonverbal. So I think if the Giants go with, a set pair of guards, that's going to help John Michael Schmitz, who was a little inconsistent last year, but, showed a lot of promise. That's going to help him tremendously. All right. One final loser, Marcus McKeffin and Joshua Azudu. Now, these are guys that got thrown into the starting lineup last year after missing some time due to injury. They weren't ready. It's not their fault. The Giants had to do it, but they weren't ready. So now by getting the veterans in here, all right, this gives Carmen Brasillo an opportunity to go back and work with these young guys and get them up to speed. It's like what I was saying with the quarterback. You don't want to rush a quarterback into the game before he's ready. It's the same thing with offensive linemen. And that's what the Giants ended up having to do. They ended up having to take some shortcuts, if you will. And, just, I don't know, just take it slow. You don't have to rush these guys in here. All right. So let them go back, see if Brasillo can develop them further. And then maybe down the line, you see if there's a role for them. So in that regard, the fact that, I say that they're losers only because I don't see them getting starting jobs. I mean, they're going to compete, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think they're going to be starters this year. And that wouldn't be a bad thing for them if they develop under Brasillo's tutelage. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and checking out the podcast. Keep it here all week long. We'll have all new shows for you, as well as video shorts if there's any breaking news. Until next time, Giant fans, have a good one, and I'll see you tomorrow.